Fine-tuning your ammo is as important as fitting the gun to your hand. In this video, how the Speed King shooting team reloads their custom rounds from start to finish.
So basically, first stage is collect your own brass. Preferably set it all aside, strain it out to where your caliber is specific. So right now we're running 9mm. There are different dies to filter different size cases, so you don't have 45 with 9, and vice versa. So right now we have a 9mm setup, Dillon case feeder with a double alpha plate insert. So what's going to happen is you're going to drop your brass into the top. It's going to drop in, feed it down through. There is a little micro switch right here that you'll see in some of the later videos. It will automatically shut off so you're not overfilling, and it's just consistently running. There's a little switch over on the side through here, which is actually going to turn on the decapper. So it's going to feed a case down in through the machine, push it forward, knock out the primer, push it forward again, which is going to deprime it. The deprime tube is going to come right through to the trash can. As it feeds the very next case, it's actually going to come down, feed it to a bucket that I have all my deprime bass for, getting ready for cleaning. So quick deal is turn on your case feeder, turn on the roll sizer, just sit back and watch it and babysit it, make sure you're not having any issues, and it does it all by itself.
Cleaning your brass is not only important for consistent powder ignition, but to show off to your shooting squad as well. Washing the brass is mandatory for removing grease, dirt, and old powder from within the primer cup and inside each casing. Soak the cases in a sonic cleaner with a cap of one-shot cleaning solution in filtered water at 110 degrees for 3 hours. To stop the cleaning process, it's necessary to neutralize the chemical reaction in a water bath. Then lay it on a towel and air dry until confirmed dry. The final step in preparing your brass is roll sizing. Roll sizing is the process that returns used pistol brass back to spec. It does this by rolling an expanded case between two tooling dies, resulting in a round and symmetrical case. Take the clean brass, place it into your hopper. It'll go down to the tube and wait its turn to go through the tooling die. Turn it on, and it'll roll through the tooling as it becomes round and symmetrical.
Hey there, guys and gals. So we talked about case cleaning and the different steps for that. So here's our finished case, and what we want to do now is we want to get to a reloaded round. And let's take a look at the reloading process and some of the equipment and materials that we need to make that happen. All right, so the basics of the materials are finished cases that we have. We already cleaned those. Primers. Ooh, that's money right there. Those are hard to find. That's like gold. Our projectiles, in this case, 9mm, 147 grain, and our powder. And this is my powder of choice. You may have something different that you've heard about. Either way, no matter what powder you use, you're going to want to have one of these. And this is a reloading manual. This is a Lyman. This is an older edition. Nonetheless, even if you've got an older one, if you're using a more modern powder, then that data will be in here corresponding with your respective bullet. All right. This is an invaluable piece of literature to use. There's a lot of information in the front of it that's worth reading, and notes. So especially if you're new to reloading, notes are going to be your friend. They are for me because my memory sucks. All right. So let's take a look at some of the other equipment. All right. Oh, what do we got here? Are we mining gold? No, these are beam scales for reloading, and I think they're probably one of the more overlooked pieces of equipment in the reloading program. Quick word on beam scales. These are the most accurate that you're going to get. They do not require batteries. They just require attention to the functionality of them, making sure that they're level, and some of the nuances, and you can see the nuance between these two. So this is an older one. This is the more common from the old school. You can even buy these now. And you see how this is kind of bobbing back and forth. It is very, very wind sensitive. So your environment's going to play a huge role in that. To that, one in the back, that is an RCBS 1010. It has this magnetic brake type system in here and slows that beam down real quick. And so even if you have just a slight little breeze, whatever, going through your garage, in your house, air conditioning, whatever, this is still going to play nice, or nicer for you than this guy will. But they will both get the job done, and they are very reliable. They do not require batteries. Okay, so our electronic scales, and yes, I do use them, but this is my backup. All right, turning over towards my loading bench. And yes, I do use an electronic scale. As you can see, it is a high-end scale. It is probably one of the most reliable. However, they're not cheap, so there are cheaper alternatives to this. All the major manufacturers make them. This is the one that I have. I got it on a real good price, so I took advantage of that. Okay, so I do use electronic scales, but I'm careful with them. I don't necessarily trust them. And I do keep these, turning back over here, I do keep these active on the bench when I need to, especially when loading rifle. Okay, but we're talking pistol for this. All right, let's take a look at the rest of the process. All right, if you're one of those guys that has one of those fancy Dillon primer self-loading tools, you don't need to see this. However, for the rest of us, this is a primer flip tray. So you're going to pour your primers in here. In this case, I just have a few, so you can see it. We're going to take this. I'm going to shake those around until they're all sitting upright. All right. We want to be looking at the anvils. Okay, we flip that pup over. We have them there, and we load those up. All right. Once we have those loaded up, we'll go over to the Dillon. All right. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take that pin out. We're going to take our case that has just the powder in it. We've already dumped the charge in there, and we want to check that. And how do we do that? So we want to make sure that we get all the powder out of the case and get that in our little tray there. And we're going to check that charge. And what we're showing here is we're showing 4.466. So that's 4/10, 600, 6,000ths, and that's obviously far finer than we ever need. The bottom line is we're at about 4.4 600ths, which means we're starting to approach, we could be approaching 4.5, but that's okay. All right. Our Reloading is not that sensitive, so that we don't have to worry about the hundreds and the thousands. That's a little crazy. All right, so now we have that back in there, and we have an empty case. We have a case that needs to be charged. We have a case here that needs a bullet. We're going to put that there, and we're going to pull the handle and seat that primer. Okay, and we're coming up to the end of our powder or primers. Advance that shell plate. We know this loads good because we already checked it. These powder drops, by the way, these slide bar powder drops are really reliable on these Dillons. Okay, and set a bullet. And we always want to make sure that we take the handle all the way down. Don't short stroke the handle. And then back up, seat that primer, go forward on that handle, and make sure you get that primer seated. Advance that shell plate. Pretty soon here we're going to run out of primers. Set that bullet. All right, remember, take this all the way down. When you take the handle all the way down, that ensures that the powder bar goes all the way back and drops that charge. You can run into all kinds of issues short stroking the handle, so take your time. Same stroke every time. Okay. All right, let's talk about the stations. So this is a Dillon 550. It only has 4 stations, but for your basic reloading needs, you only need 4. All right, so let's look at this. The back side of this over here is a sizing die. That's the first one. That's where your cases go in. Your next one over here, that's going to be a bell mouth and your powder drop. It does both operations in one. Okay. This one over here is your seating die. And these are all Dillon dies. The press just plays better, and they're very high quality dies. And the last die on the last station is going to be a taper crimp die. And I was talking about that. If you don't get the taper crimp out, and what I use here real quick, guys, on the bench to check it, this is a retired 9mm barrel. It actually got ringed, so it doubles on this nice little block as a chamber checker. So, and as long as that drops down in there, it's nice and even. Up here, we know that the head spacing is good and that it will chamber in our gun. When you're done with your reloading session, get the powder out of your powder drop. It will discolor the plastic on here, and your powder, when it sits for a long period of time in the powder drop, weeks, months, whatever, if you can see there in the camera, there's a bridge down inside of there that helps that powder uniformly travel through into your transfer bar. All right, well, they can bridge there, and you can start getting some real erratic loads. So don't leave your powder in here. Pour it in fresh every time you're ready for your reloading session, and when you're done, pour it back out into the container that it came out of. Whoops, there we go. So I always pour it back into the same container that it came out of. Any of these little funnels will work for you to get that done. All right. So I mentioned bell mouthing and head spacing in the reloading video, and I felt that needed a little further explanation. So what I've got here is I've got a case that's bell mouthed and has been modified pretty extensively just for demonstration purposes. But to that, when you're setting up your die for your bell mouthing, you don't want to overdo it to the point where you're stressing out the brass, because you can actually start creating cracks in the cases. So you don't want to do that. You want just enough of a bell mouth so the bullet will accept into the case pretty easily, and then seat it to the depth that your reloading manual calls out for. Okay. On the taper crimp side, you want to make sure that you remove that crimp, but not too much, or you start to actually crush the bullet, because you can do that. You've got tons of pressure on those presses, so you need to be careful with that. And the way you can check that very easily, so again, we'll take this case, and this case will not go down into that barrel. This is a 9mm pistol barrel. And then we've got a PCC barrel here, and no, it won't go down in there. So when you start to get that bell mouth, the taper crimp close where it actually starts to work, then it goes right in there. Yeah, that's perfect. So now we've got just enough of the bell mouth removed and the case wedged back in, just enough where we've got the rim exposed, but we're not crushing the bullet, and it chambers cleanly every time. And that is also true on the pistol barrel, okay? And that is what you're looking for on your belt or on the taper crimp side. So don't over bell mouth it, don't over crimp it or taper crimp it. So be careful with your adjustments on your dies. You want just enough of both to be able to provide for those two functions. The last function is to be able to have this round chamber reliably every time in your gun.
Like, share, subscribe.